Equity theory helps us evaluate how people react to the outcomes that they receive from their organizations. According to equity theory, when people receive outcomes, they do two kinds of evaluations. They do a fairness evaluation and they do a social equity evaluation. For the fairness evaluation, they look at the outcomes that they received and they compare that to the inputs that they provided to get to those outcomes. If that evaluation suggests fairness, people are satisfied because they like to be treated fairly. The other comparison that they make is one of social equity. With this comparison, the person looks at their own situation. They look at the outcomes they got, the inputs they provided, and they compare their situation to that of some comparison other. They look at the outcomes that person got, the inputs that person provided, and they ask, was I treated equitably in comparison to how that other person was treated? If I was, I'm satisfied because I like to be treated equitably. If I'm not, I'm dissatisfied and I want to do something about it. When a person perceives that they've been treated fairly and in an equitable manner, they not only experience satisfaction, but this has an impact on their future motivation. They're motivated to maintain fair and equitable treatment. To some people, that means maintaining the same input levels in hopes of receiving the same outcomes. But to other people, if the organization gives them this opportunity, they might increase their inputs if they believe that they will continue to be treated fairly and equitably. Increasing my inputs means the organization will increase my outcomes. So we can motivate a person who's perceived fairness and equity by letting them believe that raising their inputs will lead to a new state of fairness and equity that involves higher outcomes. There are two ways we can perceive inequity. We can perceive that we've been under-rewarded, or we can perceive that we've been over-rewarded. Now, I must tell you, it's pretty unusual for people to feel that they've been over-rewarded. We seem to have a substantial tolerance for being over-rewarded. It takes a lot of over-reward before we even recognize that we've been over-rewarded. And even when we recognize over-reward, it takes a lot of over-reward before we want to do anything about it. When we do perceive sufficient over-reward to be concerned, we have some tension, we have some guilt, and we are motivated to restore a sense of fairness and equity. If the organization provides the opportunity, I can restore that by increasing my inputs. On the other hand, if the organization does not provide me the opportunity to increase my inputs, I'll look for some other way to either live with this over-reward or to find a state of perceived equity some other way. The other kind of inequity we can perceive is under-reward. This is the most common kind of inequity that people perceive. When people perceive that they've been under-rewarded, they tend to get angry, there tends to be tension, and they're highly motivated to change that situation. Here's where it gets tricky. If I perceive I've been under-rewarded, what do I want from my organization? I want my organization to treat me fairly and equitably, which means I expect them to increase the outcomes that they give me. If the organization does not increase the outcomes, the only thing left for me to do is to decrease my inputs so that I can at least feel that the inadequate outcomes I'm being provided are fair in comparison to the now lower inputs that I provided. If this inequity is great enough, I might actually choose to leave the organization and take a job somewhere else where I think I will be treated fairly and equitably. The organization needs to understand that it's not enough to simply provide people with outcomes that they value. The organization must take steps to make sure that people perceive the outcomes they receive are fair in comparison to their inputs, and that people perceive they're being treated equitably in comparison to other people.